Hello, and welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name's Eric Lefebvre.
And my name is Jessica Tercero.
And this week, we watched Carrie.
Carrie!
Voices Carrie. Till Tuesday, shout out. We watched Carrie, and this is actually a special episode because this is a birthday episode for one of our listeners.
Yeah, this is our very first listener request, so we're really excited. This is for Nicole, and it's her birthday coming up, and she asked us to review Carrie, the 1976 version, and the 2013 version. So I'm very excited. I had no idea what to expect, and Nicole said these are her favorite movie, or Carrie is her favorite movie. And I have to say, I'm so excited to talk about 1976. Yeah. Holy shit. What an excellent recommendation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, what a treat. I mean, also, what a great reason to get me to watch these movies, because I'd literally never seen Carrie. It's been, again, like a lot of these movies, on my list. I want to see it, but I never do, so this was perfect because I got to see this movie.
Yeah, and I mean, canonically, y'all know, I am a big old scaredy cat, but I think I might be finding that I'm maybe not as big of a scaredy cat as I thought I was.
Oh, really?
Because yeah, I loved every minute of the story of the first one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, it was excellent. And I mean, like, you know, Alien, also good. And, you know, like all these, like, quote unquote scary movies we've been watching. And maybe it's just maybe like 70s, 80s horror is my thing, or like, you know, suspense horror. Like, I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. That was also one of my things as a young person. I liked the idea of scary movies. I didn't necessarily like scary movies. And then once I started watching them more frequently, it was more about like, oh yeah, sure, that was scary, but like, was the story good? Did I like the characters? Like, was the twist cool, or was it bad? Or like, was this really scary, or was it just like jump scares with some bad audio? Like, what is good about this? And I think like a good horror movie, especially oftentimes because horror is rooted in like queerness and trauma and all of these things, and so for that, I feel like a lot of these stories, surface level, are pretty like, okay, cool, it's like a slasher Muppets, whatever, but like in a more nuanced way, are really interesting just in the subject matter, like especially with Carrie, like familial trauma, like misogyny, like all of these like really, really
religious suppression of women.
Yes, right? Like all of these incredibly like palpable, intense pieces of subject matter that on the surface it's just like, oh well, she has powers and she kills people, sick, still on board, still love. But the fact that the story is very much more based in that conversation of sort of intense topics and less just about like get 'em, kill 'em, blood, you know what I mean?
I mean, well, the first one.
The first
like,
one, yeah.
The second one is basically like a carbon copy, just like the darker, grittier version. Like we love here on this pod, right?
Ish. It's like it tries to do the darker, grittier thing, but at the same time does the opposite. I don't know. There's a lot about. I mean, I'm excited. I have so much to say about both, but.
Oh man, and like the actor, I forget her name, but she was also in Let Me In. She was
Chloe Grace
one of the
Moretz.
characters. Yeah, and I'm like, so she's remaking these movies, and I'm like, sweetheart, you can do better than this. It's okay, because like I feel like this is you know how like Let Me In was like a weird, like a watered down, like just kind of the same story, like fine, whatever. Like this one is like the B version of that, but it still has like a very similar feel to me. I was like, oh yeah, this tracks. Like this super tracks, you know?
For sure. Yeah.
I am so stoked to talk about these. What a great recommendation. Should we just jump in?
Let's do it.
Carrie White is an outsider. She is raised and abused by religious fanatic and all-around toxic mom, Margaret White. And after being bullied and abused by a group of her peers at school, Carrie discovers she has telekinetic powers. Watch out, bullies! In an attempt to right the wrongs of her students, fitness coach Miss Collins reprimands Carrie's bullies with a week of after-school detention, or else its prom rights revoked. But big bag meanest bully of them all, Chris Hargensen, doesn't care. Prom be damned. She and her boyfriend, Billy Nolan, break into a local farm and steal pig's blood for a horrifying prank at Carrie's expense. Sue Snell, one of the only bullies who feels sorry about what she'd done, asks her pretty jock boyfriend, Tommy Ross, to invite Carrie to prom as an attempt at restorative justice. Carrie is not buying it.
Miss Collins confronts Sue and Tommy about what she believes to be another cruel prank, but they insist it's nothing more than recompense. After combative confrontation with her mother, Carrie reveals her telekinetic powers and is seen as nothing more than an abomination. Fuck it, I'm going to prom. I mean, she doesn't say that, but sort of. Prom is a dream. Miss Collins couldn't be happier for Carrie, and the results are in. The bullies rigged the system to make sure Carrie is standing under the bucket of blood they've rigged above the stage. The blood is dropped, and all hell breaks loose. Carrie burns down the auditorium, kills Chris and Billy in a forced car accident, and, upon returning home covered in blood, is stabbed by Margaret, who she then stabs more, killing her. Grief-stricken, Carrie crushes the house with her powers, and her legend lives on.
It lives on.
The whole ending was just like so much. I mean, obviously there had to be some sort of like ending with the mom because that was like a big part of the narrative, but part of me was just like, oh yeah, the school is like the apex of it, right? Like I thought that's like the big moment, and it's like, no, she goes home, and then there's the whole mom of it all, and I was like, oh shit.
I mean, I kind of loved that because the whole reason why Carrie is bullied and everything is because her mom doesn't give her the necessary tools that she needs to navigate the world. Like, yeah. She gets, like, we start off by, like, seeing a bunch of young teenagers' bodies, right, naked in the showers, right? And then, like, we see this moment, like, which is basically the only moment where Carrie is just, she's by herself. And, you know, it was kind of sensual how she was, like, in the shower, like, touching herself and, like, just general sexy shower moves, right? But it wasn't, to me, it wasn't done in, like, a typical horror tasteless way. It was just, like, she's a young woman that is coming into her own and exploring her body and, you know, like, figuring out who she is. And then all of a sudden she starts bleeding. And, you know, because her mother is this, you know, borderline cult religious fanatic person, right? She didn't even tell her about her period. She didn't tell her about these things that are so inherent to like biologically being coded as a woman, right?
Yeah.
And so like she thinks she's dying, and like just how traumatic that whole experience. And then to like have everybody just kind of like laugh it off and just be like, yo, plug it up, whatever, you know. And she's literally begging for help, and like all anybody can do is just laugh at her because her mom is just awful.
Yeah, I think I took a few notes about that like intro sequence, because as much as I'm like, I like that it's sort of setting up this fun, kind of sexy, kind of frivolous, whatever of these girls, but at the same time, the director is a man. And these girls are literal teenagers. They're children. And he's just like, oh, yeah, everyone tits out. Go. Everyone, like, you know what I mean?
It felt gross.
It felt too much. Like, you can portray the same information with not as much, not to say, like, I don't know. Yeah, with not as much nudity, especially when it's teenage girls. Like, it just felt a little bit too much. Because, like, the scene with Carrie in the shower when it's, like, more of her like bathing herself, that was plenty good of a story beat of like there's like a sensuality, there's like a loving yourself, like an onus of like your body and accepting all of its like shape, everything about it. And then the shot of like sort of the red water running down her leg, that, I mean, visually
perfect, gorgeous
and great. Like, yes, you're setting the scene. Also the blood at the end, like the whole deal, we're going. But I was like, hey, you didn't really need to do that. I felt like this movie was just like, hey, let's sexualize these children, which was a little like, especially for off the bat, like setting the story, like there wasn't much of a narrative about sexualizing children apart from like the mom being like, oh, you had your period, you're a sinner now, and you're gross because of sex, because this is the sex part of your body. Like, you know what I mean? But that was definitely I don't know. I don't really, apart from that, I don't really know how to feel about it.
I feel like there's a way to, there's a definite way to like celebrate femininity and like the feminine form and everything, and like have this kind of commentary on women's bodies without having to just be so overt about the sexualization of these young women.
Yeah.
So like that was like pretty jarring for me, because like you said, like it was like it felt to me like very male gazy. I mean, this whole Carrie is written by Stephen King. It's his very first novel, and also the very first novelization of a film that he did, right? Or of one of his works. But
for me, that's the question though, is because of the intentional male gazy aspect of it. Is the commentary intentional? Like, is it a male director being male gazy and sexualizing children? Or is it a commentary on the way the patriarchy and the male gaze sexualizes children? Does that make sense? Like, is it an intentional commentary, or is it just life imitating art in that way, where it's just like, well, he's just a cishet man who is, I'm assuming, sexualizes women in life, so that's just being portrayed here? Or is it, I don't know. I don't think it's an intentional commentary, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't need like 5 minutes of naked teenagers.
Yeah, because really, like, if it
but
was...
like that shower scene with Carrie was perfect, like you said.
Great.
You know, like it was... Yes. I love, because like throughout this whole film, like, you know, Carrie is just kind of demonized and bullied, and she is like the personified demonization of womanhood and femininity and stuff like that, right? Like she is like, that's what's happening with her. And so I love that we start this off by showing Carrie loving herself and showing that she does have these kind of feelings. Like, we see her and we don't know anything about her, and we just know that she's a girl. She's just a normal girl, right? And then, you know, because everything else, if we didn't have that scene, like, you know, she's screaming, or she's really introverted, or she's like cautious, or she's scared, you know. But like in that first moment, just that, like, you know, minute or 2 minutes that it was that shower scene for her, it really sets up like, hey, she's not just that, you know. And I like that. And I think that that's what just even that quick moment, like, I mean, you should already root for Carrie because like of everything that she's put through, but like that humanizes her in a way that I think really does carry throughout the whole film, you know.
Oh yeah, Carrie, Carrie. No, I mean, I completely agree. I was gonna see how many times I can make the joke where I feel like I interrupt or something. I'll be like, oh no, carry on, like you go, carry on. Like, oh yeah, I got carried away. Sorry, I got carried away.
Oh my
God. but there is also a level of like that first sequence too. I think is a really good introduction to like systemic misogyny, right? Like, this person who is unfamiliar with menstruation, as somebody who menstruates, she like, I don't know what's happening. I'm dying. Literally, like, I think I'm dying. Please help me. She's reaching out to other people who will hopefully empathize with her. And like, I'm hopefully like you, assuming I'm like you, please help me. But they, in turn, belittle her and bully her and shame her in every fucking turn, in the same way that the patriarchy does this to women and to people who menstruate, and like just in general. So that sort of baked in, like, this type of anti-feminist, this type of like anti-woman was taught, and they all learned it. And so in this moment where
they're perpetuating it,
so Carrie, who, I mean, we're being told knows almost nothing, is just human reaching out for connection, reaching out for empathy, reaching out for help. And this ingrained, learned system of oppression and misogyny is just spewed back in her face. I thought that was like, I mean, just as a story, I'm like, yeah, okay, great. Like, this is going to be this whole conversation about this, which it was. And I think that was like a really good first scene. I mean, also terrifying and so fucking sad. Like, Jesus Christ.
Like, what a great, I feel like that is like such a great way to like set up the whole story, set up the characters, set up the conflict, set up like, God, I really loved this movie. And I think a lot of it had to do with just like some of these story choices, like 5 minutes in, I'm fucking here for this, right? Like I'm all in 100%, right? And going back to like the teenage girls, right? So like I like to call women like that, you know, I got it from Jamila DeMille, but like they're double agents of the patriarchy, right? Where they are working to maintain the status quo that patriarchy has imprinted upon them, right?
Yeah.
And like it's also super interesting because like there's really, other than like maybe Miss Collins like reaching out, and you know like Sue to a certain extent, who we'll talk about later, but like those women, like you don't see real connection. You only see them acting like men in the sense of it's all about dominance and control, and they are just trying to like dominate each other to make sure that they are at the top, and they only respond to masculine forms of punishment, whether that's like the teacher slapping them or like, you know, like making them do physical, like, you know, not even like just detention, go to detention, whatever. No, you're going to be out here and I'm going to make you sweat. I'm going to make you fucking work for this, right? And that's what gets them to respond, right? And then when Chris, you know, the pretty girl, when she decides that she's not going to be the beta to Miss Collins, then she picks up and sacrifices prom, right? Which is like, first of all, I want to go on the record as saying like, I hate what a big deal movies make out of prom, because it's almost like super, it's so forced and it's not great. It's not anything like the movies. And it just feels like, oh, well, you're going to be left out. And like, I hate that as a trope, and I will fucking talk about that on another episode someday, sometime. But yeah, so like, you know, presumably she's the pretty girl. She is going to be prom queen or nominated or something. But she's so egotistical, and she has to be in control, that she gives that up, you know, presumably this apex of childhood, right? Or of, you know, like it's almost like a rite of passage, right? Into, you know, going like senior prom. Now you're out in the world, like the whole Grease party scene, whatever, right? So she's willing to give that up just to prove a point, you know? And then she also, like, you know, her friends are like, no, it's fine. Like, we're going to stay here and do this because we want to go to prom. And then, like, what she does, because they back down, right, she establishes herself as the alpha. And then at the prom, she uses all of these people to carry out, like, you know, this whole big elaborate thing with the votes, right? And with, like, the staging and the setting up of all of these things, you know. I thought that was super interesting that they just respond to masculine forms of dominance and
yeah. I mean, and that's like honestly one of the recurring themes that I thought was the most interesting. Like you were saying, like even Miss Collins, like her immediate response to stepping out of line or to trauma is violence. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. Like she just slaps kids and hits them, like whatever. And then similarly, like Margaret, that's also kind of her response to everything too, is either self-harm or harming her daughter, like as a response to stress, a stimuli, like a way to maintain order and maintain the balance of any situation is violence. Mm-hmm. And that's just a consistent theme throughout. And I mean, the only this isn't true, but the only person who doesn't, do that for the most part is Carrie. I mean, obviously with the exception of like literally all the violence at the end. But you know what I mean? Like that to me is like, I'm like, you earned that. You go for it. Like you, honestly, Carrie, you earned it. You deserve it. You deserve this moment for you. But like really she's like generally the most kind, humane person, the most humane character in the story. I mean, I know Miss Collins is sort of written as this sort of like savior or like the only person who understands, but even she her way of understanding or her way of handling things is violence. There is still that level of like insidiousness within this context of character for Miss Collins. And so I don't know, I thought that as just like a running idea was really interesting. Mm-hmm. And then also like John Travolta, the way that he like he's sort of like the surrogate male sort of reminding us of this kind of misogynistic violence and this like perpetuated patriarchy. The way like he hits her in the car and she's like, what the, he hits Chris in the car and she's like, what the fuck? And he's like, don't call me that again. It hurts my feelings. Like, okay, so you're just going to punch her in the face? Cool. And then he's like drinking and driving and the cops roll by and he throws the beer on her and she's like, what the fuck? And he's like, hits her again. He's like, shut up. Don't curse at me. Like, oh my God. Like literally any wince of unease is met with an instant act of violence. Just again, to maintain status quo. And by status quo, I mean patriarchal structure and male dominance.
And then we see Chris, like, you know, her response to this, like you said, is also kind of like violence, whether even if like that's the way that she's talking to other people too. Like, you know, it's always with that, it always feels like a razor blade when she's talking, like with what she's saying and what she's doing, right? So we see, you know, the boyfriend, we see Billy get like pissed off and is like, yeah, whatever, fuck you, right? And she's like, oh no, but I'll blow you right now. So she understands this game and she's furthering her own objectification because this is what she knows and this is how the world works, right?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about Chris and about just patriarchy in general, right, is the entire plot was put into motion because of her response to femininity, right?
Yeah.
And then, like, even through the whole story and everything, she's unwilling to realize that she is the catalyst and she is the reason why, because, you know, cool, all right, so then there's this response, right? And then there's a masculine response to that where it's like, you know, well, I'm going to punish you. And then there's another masculine response to this. And it's just like all of these people trying to get dominance. And really, like, the whole thing was caused through her own cruelty, right? All of these people, like all of the characters in this, like really exude just, you know, different forms of patriarchy, right? And like, you know, and patriarchy can even have like a nice space sometimes, right? Where like you were saying, Miss Collins, she, you know, tries to create safe spaces for Carrie. And then she has that conversation with like the principal, right? Where she's just like, I can't believe her mom didn't tell her, like she's this old and everything. And it's like, yes, but you're there to help her. Like, you know, you put yourself in this role, you know?
Yeah.
And she's like, I wanted to shake her too. It's just her period. I get how those girls felt, you know? So she's admitting that she suffers from this level of patriarchy, right? And then that whole scene where they're at the field and she's like pushing him, you know, it's all about domination and control. Even like later on when she's talking to Sue and Tommy, you know, being like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? It's still all about, you know, it's all about intimidation, right?
Yeah.
Which is also an incredibly masculine thing, you know, but to Carrie, she's not presenting this at all, you know, she's just saying like, hey, that's so great, I'm so happy for you. And so like in the same turn, she's also like telling her like, hey, you're beautiful, like, hey, this is really good for you. And so while she's trying to build Carrie up, she's still participating in this system. And then like the same thing with Tommy too, where Tommy, like, you know, that whole thing is weird and gross and I don't get it, you know, and then there's a kiss, whatever. But he's like, you know, don't be nervous, you know, it's okay. And he's like very patient with her, but like at the same time, he's like forces her to go to prom with him, right? He will not take no for an answer. And then even in his like goodness, he's still controlling of her because he likes flattery, right? He tells her, I asked you because you liked the poem that I didn't write, by the way, but because you liked that. And then like he goes to kiss her and she apologizes and he's like, no, it's fine. And then he still kisses her, right? And that's like furthered too by like him saying like, oh, we'll vote for ourselves, fuck modesty, right? And like the line where he's like, don't let me catch you hugging other guys, right? When, like, sure, that's supposed to be funny and cute. And, like, this is, like, the apex of Carrie's life right here, where she finally has something nice and has something that she believes, like, you know, that she believes is actually happening for the first time ever. But it's literally just a facade under the guise of patriarchy.
Yeah, like I wrote that down too. That don't you ever let me catch you hugging guys like that? And she's like, I won't. And he's like, you better not. And then Miss Collins says something, and he just butts in with like, would you let me finish? He's so he's so constantly in control or attempting to be in control of not only women's bodies but women's language, like women in general, like these femme people. He's trying to make sure that they know that he is in charge. And that he is good and that he did this out of the kindness of his heart. I mean, those are kind of two separate ideas just because of this faux performative good that he's trying to imbue on himself. Like, yeah. I mean, and again, here's one of those things that like bothers me the most in general. Like, but what I like is the story because it's written that way. These characters are kind of just shitty. So when they die at the end, I'm kind of like, yeah, I mean... fuck off. Like even Miss Collins, I'm like, yeah, dude, she was kind of bad. Like this whole thing, Miss Collins, like even in this attempt to be like, oh, her mom should have whatever, like that's a problem. Like you said, how about you have a conversation with her, talk to her, don't just chastise her for ignorance. She doesn't know.
Or put a Band-Aid on it and say, hey, it's okay, you're pretty.
Yeah, right? Like just do something instead of just like, you need to work on your social skills so that you can go to prom and like, good for you. So happy for you that you're fitting in. Like, or talk about the bullying, talk about how, like, talk to her about what's going on. Talk to her about real things, not this like faux fantasy of high school
not
courtship.
This coddling. Like
you
clearly,
don't, yeah.
Because coddling is what got her to where she is
Yeah.
right now, right? And so by trying to be nice and not having these real conversations because she doesn't believe that Carrie can handle it or whatever is
Yeah.
what I assume is the reason. But like what she's doing is to ultimately is also kind of what leads to this, right? She doesn't like try to like she tries to help her in a very patriarchal way,
Yeah.
you know? And like all she needed to do was like just be more forthcoming and like have
Yeah.
more real discussions, and she didn't do it.
She didn't know. And honestly, like, just coddling in general is a form of control. You know what I mean? Like, she's trying to control Carrie's narrative. She's trying to do that, like, facade hero, just like, oh, you're wounded, let me fix you. I want to fix you. It's like, stay out of her, like, either help her in a real way or get the fuck away from her. Like, either you're going to really help her and offer some kind of aid, talk to her about her family, talk, like whatever she's willing to share with you and willing to allow, because it's obviously her life. Like, leave her the fuck alone. But at that same time, like, either do it or leave. Don't do this like in between where like, yeah, I helped her get here. I did this. Like, I'm in control. In the same way that like fucking Sue's trying to like, you know, what I did was bad. Let me make sure she has everything that she wants. It's like, you don't know what she wants. You don't know her.
And also for one night, what's going to happen after prom?
Exactly. Like, who fucking cares? You did a bad thing. That's like, I mean, it's not okay, but like, you did a bad thing. Apologize and leave. Like, don't do this whole performance of heroism. Like, it's just another form of control. Leave her the fuck alone. It's manipulative. It's gross. It's toxic. So, I mean, that's the point of the story, right? With these characters is like, for whatever fake good is being presented, they're all still bad. And like the revenge of Carrie just being like, yeah, I'm finally in control. Like, fuck yeah. I was so just like, yeah, dude. Fuck all of these people. You are in control. It is your life, and you're better than everybody here. Fucking
yeah, because
it.
Everybody was trying to like you said, everybody's trying to control her and trying to be like, oh well, that's best, you know, this is best. Like the principal tried to like, you know, despite this being harmful for Carrie, he neglects her situation and sends her home to the one that's perpetuating it, right? And he's like,
yeah, exactly.
Look, we can't interfere with other people's beliefs, you know, like, and it's just like, okay, but this is like actually neglect. Like this is actually causing her harm. And, you know, like what are you doing? And I like that every character in this, aside from Carrie, right, is a participant in patriarchy and in different ways, right? We have Sue, who's a manipulator, right? We have the principal, who's like the general stand-in for all men and their fears and misunderstandings about women, with his like he can't fucking say period, right? Like he's just so uncomfortable even like mentioning this, and it's like, fucker, stop, right?
Yeah,
and then you have like Tommy, you know, where he's the nice guy, but then he also like is just like you said, just incredibly controlling, like in this like subtle way, but like in such a subtle way that he seems fine, right?
Yeah.
And then just the women too, and like the different parts that they inhabit of that in participating in patriarchy willingly and furthering their own objectification, really, you know?
Yeah.
Truly, like, Carrie was just such an incredible character. And to me, that reminded me of how it is like just walking the world as a woman, and at every corner being told, like, from people that are supposed to be trusted, or like brands, or, you know, like media messaging and stuff like that, where you're always told what to think or what to do or how to be perceived. And I just really, really loved how she just kind of was a normal person walking in this world, and like was traumatized by it, because of course, like, it is incredibly traumatizing to be a woman with all of this different, you know, messaging on telling you what you need to be and how you need to act and what you need to do. And yeah, girl, I also want to go hide in the library and learn about my magic powers, because fuck that, you know?
Yeah.
And then to go home and just like not to like, I really want to talk about the mom, but I also want to talk about how Carrie is ultimately just looking for somebody to help her navigate a world that she doesn't understand. And like, because of the trauma that she's received in this space, she doesn't trust it when it's offered, from like, rightfully so, right, from like Miss Collins, who, by the way, is the whole reason that everything happened, because she didn't trust somebody else who was looking out for her, because Sue was going to go up there and fucking save her from that blood, right? And then Miss Collins was like, no, get the fuck out of here, right? So like, you know, that whole pitting women against women, right? There's no women that are friends here, really, you know? But anyways, Carrie, she does things like, she says to her mom, please, I'm not like you. I'm funny. I just want to be normal. I just want to be a whole person. Everything isn't a sin. Not all people are bad. I'm not Satan. It's me, Mom. I'm the only one. And I'm just like, yeah, like, this is like, these lines were just so fucking good. Whereas she's just saying, like, I am not like you. I am a real person, you know, like, I want to try to be a whole person. What a fucking statement.
Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the things is I love, especially with Carrie, just recognizing and coming into her own autonomy. Like, it is really that, like, and again, I keep saying this moment where she burns everything down. Like, it's her coming into her power, like, literally and figuratively coming into her power as an autonomous person, but also obviously as like a telekinetic person as well. You know what I mean? But yeah, like, I mean, I think that that's gorgeous. In the same way, like, seeing those glimpses of how she talks to her mom, and when she starts pushing back, and you get these small moments of like when Margaret says, your father was carried away by a demon. That's why he's gone. He was carried away by the evil spirits. And she's like, no, he wasn't. He ran away with a woman. Like, everyone knows that. Like, I don't know why you're perpetuating this idea. I don't know why you keep trying to convince me that it's this thing, and I know that that thing is not real. You're lying to me. You're gaslighting me. This is all fake. Like, I understand it. I'm learning, and I'm realizing that that's what you've been doing this entire time. And
then her mom's like, Satan! He possesses people. And you're like, oh my God. Okay. Like, fine. Yeah. Like, she says stuff like that's, I have 3 very specific scenes that I want to talk about with the mom, and this is one of them. Because, you know, Carrie is trying to show her this beautiful dress that she made herself, right? And she's like, don't you think this is pretty? Don't you think these these flowers that I have are pretty? And all she can focus on is her dirty pillows, right?
Which, I'm obsessed with the phrase dirty pillows.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard that before, and I never knew where that came from, and I was like, fuck yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's a great term. I'm obsessed.
But like that whole scene too, like she's you know, she says like after the blood come the boys. They try to find out where it comes from, and it's like no. Like, no, Mom, right? But Carrie's dress is pink, right? So when we first see Carrie, she wears a lot of like white and everything, right? Signifying that sort of innocence. But like, this dress is pink, and it starts off pink before she gets blooded on at the prom. But Mom calls it red. And it's because she sees everything in binary, right? And so that also furthers the notion that we talk about a lot on the podcast, where binary is bad because it causes just so much harm. And this is another way. She just had a pink dress on and her mom was like, this is red, you're tainted forever, you know, and it will burn the dress together. And I'm like, oh my God. And then her way of controlling Carrie is to try to hurt herself, right? I had a boyfriend that at one point, like in high school, was like, oh, if you break up with me, I'm going to kill myself, right? And so like just that's a form of control that abusers will often use, is just, you know, think of my well-being though. I'm going to be left out. I'm going to be hurt. I'm going to be this, you know? And the way that she did that too was just like, it was incredibly creepy. And I feel like it really worked for the characterization of the mom. But I again, just another form of patriarchy and patriarchal tactics of controlling women, you know?
Yeah. Well, even similarly, like the way that she says pimples are the Lord's way of chastising you, it's sort of like a way of controlling image and female image for the male gaze. Like, you're being punished, you're being made, big air quotes, ugly as a form of punishment by God. But in the same breath will be like, sex is bad, and the fact that people find you attractive is disgusting, you're worthless, whatever. So it's like, it's both. It's both the controlling women through the idea of sexualness and the male gaze, and it's you're the biggest sinner to have ever sinned ever, and all of that sex is also bad. So it's like it's both things, and it's also, I mean, at least for Margaret, I mean, it's an obviously impossible situation. Like, obviously Margaret's fucked. Mentally, she really needs some help. She's really struggling. She should not have children. And that whole fucking conversation where she's like, I should have given you to the Lord when you were born. I'm like, whoa, okay. Jesus Christ. You know, I just, and like we were saying, it's just another form of control. It's what about me? Think about me. Think about my needs. Centering herself in the life of this other person as a means of control.
The thing too is like, you know, so within this, like, mom is incredibly religious, right? And religious to the point to where she forces Carrie to, like, you know, call herself a sinner and tell her that she's bad, and, you know, what is the first sin, like just the way that she like chastises her for that. And in a way, to me, like, reading this through a feminist lens, when you're born a woman in a patriarchal society, you're doomed from birth, right? You're doomed from the very start, right? So like, there's no winning, and you will forever be bad, not because you deserve it, but just because when you get to a certain age, that's what it is. You know? Like, I
think that's also, like, just from like a queer perspective as well. Like, I think it's the general demeaning of feminists at large. Like, the existence of feminists is a target.
Yeah.
For anybody, whether that's like cis women, femme folks of any kind, really. Like, feminist is a target in a patriarchal system. Wherever it exists, it will be locked on and trying, like, the attempt would be to stamp it out, like that. And that's the insidiousness of patriarchy and misogyny in that way, is it is so toxic, and it is so ingrained to target and to hate and to belittle at every turn. I mean, we talked about this a little bit with Alien, and like Ripley in that way, where it's like this constant belittling despite everything, despite credentials, despite autonomy, despite anything. It's, you are this thing first, and I hate that. I hate you. You know what I mean? It's just, it's so toxic and scary and gross. Like, ugh.
It really is. Like, that whole scene, like the period conversation she has with her mom, the prom conversation, and then the post-prom conversation that she has with her mom, right? All of those scenes were just they were incredible.
Yeah.
And they were just so good. And I feel like that's what really, like, that's why her going there after prom, like, I loved that. Because, you know, then she's wreaked havoc on all these other people. She goes to her mommy for, help. And that's when she realizes that even her mom is the biggest perpetuator of all of this, right? And like,
which is to say that misogyny is systemic in religious structures as well. Like, I mean, not to fully dog Christianity or like the current representation of Christianity, but like that shit is so systemically misogynist. It's crazy. It is a literal, like, I mean, it's so, like, women are not people in the Bible oftentimes. And so there is that conversation. So for her, like, I think that also just, for Margaret, it wreaks havoc on her own person, that kind of indoctrinated misogyny that she's getting from these religious texts, just continuously perpetuating the idea that she is worthless and that she should not exist. Like,
but at the same time, she is superior, and she is the only one that can pass judgment on people. Yes,
which is also a part of that kind of a text where it is sort of like, you are simultaneously worthless and simultaneously the most important person. You're literally worth nothing, but also you're going to save the world. And it's like, wait.
Another gaslighting tactic that we love.
What? What is happening? Who am I? Yeah, it's fucking messy. Yeah.
I do want to say the post-prom scene when Margaret tells Carrie, while she's saying, like, hold me, Mom, I need you, right? She says, I should have killed myself when he put it in me. After the first time he promised he'd never do it again. I liked it. He was drunk and I liked it. I should have given you to God, right? Like, kind of saying, like, that she's, like, self-punishing herself, right? As we see her, like, bang her head against the wall to where she gives herself a bruise and all of this. But because she liked what happened, because she liked sex, because she enjoyed that, like, just that level of internalized misogyny and patriarchy to me was like, that's why Mom had to be the very last one to go. And I also loved that she was crucified in that same way that, like, the Jesus in the prayer room was, like, with that fucking evil stare. And I also loved that it was kind of orgasmic for her. Like, she was kind of, like, coming while she was dying.
Okay. 100%. I think, and that's one of those things that it's like, it felt like, based on the conversation that she had, like you said, where it's like, she's punishing herself for enjoying sex because she shouldn't be allowed to enjoy sex, right? Like, that shouldn't be something that she's allowed to enjoy because it's so forbidden, it's so bad. Again, Eve was weak, right? Like, because she had sex, fuck her, she's terrible, and women are less than because of Eve, whatever. So in that moment, there was sort of this near orgasm, like when she's being stabbed, like sort of a release of power. And for her, the release of power is like orgasmic. I don't know. It's a little eerie. I mean, I think intentionally, but yeah, it 100%. It did feel like that. Where, I don't
also
know.
Then, because she, like, hurts herself, right? So then, like, being hurt by somebody else, like, she takes pleasure in that because she deserves it. So that might also be why she.
Oh, yeah.
That might be part of it,
I'm a sinner. I deserve death.
Yeah. Probably. I mean, knowing that character,
Yeah.
I do also want to, since we're talking about, like, visuals, I also want to shout out how fucking cool some of these shots were. Like, the house was gorgeous. Like, the hall, the frame to the dining room, right? And, like, the Jesus staring at Carrie through the skylight, and then her doing the makeup with Jesus, like, in the broken mirror with Jesus, like, watching her. Like, some of these shots were just so intentional and so well composed, and not like an over congratulatory way, but in just like this really gorgeous I ate it up. I ate that shit up.
I mean, just that mirror scene alone, because it's a mirror that she breaks this image of herself and literally puts the pieces back together and is this new version of her. It's like, because then the next time we see the mirror, it's broken but put back together, but she's wearing that pink dress and she's putting on makeup, which is a whole new me, like she's just like, this is who I am now. I don't care. And you're right. It was so intentional. That scene in particular, or that, like, idea I also loved. I thought it was so well done. It was not in your face. It was very subtle, but still very intentional and cool.
And I liked too that, like, you know, in those moments when she did choose to break things, it was always a response to patriarchy. She was breaking something because she was literally trying to break the system, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So like the first time that we see her use these powers, and I also, in this one, I love that she doesn't just fucking use them all the time. I love that it's a response. I love that, sure, she might like cultivate it slightly or try to understand it, but I love that it was a response, right? Like, so, you know, the first time we see her with the light bulb in the shower from the period, right? And in that response, she wants to break that. She wants to break the system and how they responded to her, right? And then the ashtray in the principal's office when he keeps calling her by a different name, right? And she could hear them literally outside talking, like that whole scene. She fucking heard everything, and they're just pretending like it doesn't matter, you know? Then there's like the kid on the bike. And then there's, you know, the mirror with God watching, like we just talked about. There's like her mom being hysterical and trying to use these. And this is when we like really see her start to use her powers on other people, is when somebody she's trying to manipulate her into not existing in the world in the way that she wants to, or being allowed to enjoy herself, right? And she literally forces her mom to sit down. And then at prom, she just fucking loses it, which is great and I love. But it's all in response to patriarchy and the way that it tries to dehumanize her as a woman living in this society.
It's all of her action, all of her non-consensual violence is responsive, not offensive.
Yeah.
It's constantly responding to something else. It is it's rather defensive, not offensive. It's not malicious or going intentionally to create anything. It's simply a response to other people's trauma. And then obviously it's just like, oh my God, she did this bad thing. And it's like, well, no, all of these other bad things happened that everybody ignored because it's commonplace in the system. She is responding to it in a way that people should respond to these kinds of things. You should acknowledge the atrocities that exist every day that are so commonplace and so ingrained in society and expectation of people's day to day. And she's just responding to it and maybe like, this is fucked. I hate this. No more. I'm done with this. Good for
I
Carrie.
love this movie.
Good for her. Carrie White is an outsider. She is raised and abused by religious fanatic and all-around toxic mom, Margaret White, and after being bullied and abused by a group of her peers at school, Carrie discovers she has telekinetic powers. Watch out, bullies. In an attempt to right the wrongs of her students, fitness coach Miss Collins reprimands Carrie's bullies with a week of after-school detention, or else it's prom rights revoked. But big bad, meanest bully of them all, Chris Hargison, doesn't care. Prom be damned. While she and boyfriend Billy Nolan break into a local farm to steal pig's blood for a horrifying prank at Carrie's expense, Sue Snell, one of the only bullies who feels sorry about what she'd done, asks her pretty jock boyfriend Tommy Ross to invite Carrie to prom as an attempt at restorative justice. Carrie is not buying it.
Miss Collins confronts Sue and Tommy about what she believes to be is another cruel prank, but they insist it's nothing more than recompense. After a combative confrontation with her mother, Carrie reveals her telekinetic powers and is seen as nothing more than an abomination. Fuck it, I'm going to prom. I mean, she doesn't say it, but kind of sorta. Prom is a dream. Miss Collins couldn't be happier for Carrie, and the results are in. The bullies rigged the system to make sure Carrie is standing under the bucket of blood they've rigged above the stage. The blood is dropped and all hell breaks loose. Carrie burns down the auditorium, kills Chris and Billy in a forced car accident, and upon returning home, covered in blood, is stabbed by Margaret, who she then stabs more, killing her. Sue shows up at Carrie's house post-chaos, where Carrie informs her she's pregnant with a daughter. Okay, gender reveal. Carrie mind pushes Sue out of harm's way, and grief-stricken, Carrie crushes the house with all her powers, and her legend lives on.
Her legend lives on. Yeah, it's essentially the exact same movie with a couple weird additions for literally no reason that add nothing to the plot.
Like zero.
Like that whole
It cheapens it. If anything, it cheapens it.
It cheapens it, yeah. Like, I know that they're trying to do with Sue showing up and being like, Carrie, I'm here for you. I'm like a real friend and not a fake poser, like, jerk bully anymore. This story's about me. Remember, my name's Sue Snell. Pay attention to me. I'm the hero
I'm
here.
not going to go to prom because I don't deserve it.
And
like, oh my God.
She keeps looking at her fucking dress. There's like 17 shots of her looking at that gorgeous red dress that she bought for prom and longingly being like, oh, I'm such a martyr. Like, shut up. I'm so bored with this narrative. You're literally like, you're an asshole. Just go, like, what? Yeah, no, that's a whole deal. But the whole ending where her showing up, I mean, like, oh my God, Carrie, and Carrie being like, what have I done? Like, oh my God, I killed my mom. This is so bad. And then she like reaches up to her and she's like, it's a girl. And Sue's like, what? And she's like, you don't know, do you? And it's like, what?
And she like throws, yeah. And I'm like,
the movie's over. I know the reason they did it was to be like, Carrie's sort of giving Sue the opportunity to be the mom that Carrie never had, right? Like, Sue is growing, or like in this one, it's more obvious. Sue is growing and learning and attempting to be a better person, and is understanding that like people are at fault. Like, you can have your faults, but as long as you like recognize them and grow from them, you can be a better person. Like, we're all fallible people, right? Mm-hmm. So the story's trying to be like, you now go raise a daughter and be the mom that I never had. Which, sure. But at the same time, I'm like, really? Who fucking cares?
Like, okay,
like,
this movie is less about Carrie. And they did that thing that they do in a lot of movies, where instead of giving more story time to the main character, we just have more of the parents and more of the bad guys. Way more Sue and more of Chris. More Chris. Which was like, I feel like they didn't know they missed the entire point of the first movie, right? I was like, okay, why are you doing this? And like everything in this film, like to me, just felt incredibly forced. And it felt like they were trying to have these big moments, like, you know, for these characters, right? Like, you know, the like case in point, right? They're like, oh, it's a girl. And we're supposed to make that connection because she was fucking her boyfriend earlier, you know, in the car or whatever, right? And it's like, okay, but you haven't done that work. Like, Sue and Carrie do not have a relationship, you know? And we're supposed to feel bad for somebody, but like, I don't understand. I don't get it, because it felt so much cheaper. And then also there was so much more emphasis on Carrie's birth, right? Her mom didn't know that she was pregnant and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. And then to me, like, I was like, okay, cool. Like, so right now, is this trying to tell me that babies born out of wedlock are bad? So her mom has this baby and like literally is going to stab it in the face with a knife. And then she grows up to be this witch, right? Or have these powers. And then it's just all bad and she needs to die. So it's like, okay, like, so are we demonizing this? What are we saying with this? I don't get it.
Like what was that? Was the birthing scene necessary? Not at all. No. I mean, I think the whole intention was like kind of a gross out factor, just as far as like the visualization of like a pair of scissors getting so close to a child. I think that was supposed to just be provocative, and that's the only reason it's there. Because it offers literally nothing. We know that's her mom. We know she was born. We know Margaret almost killed her at her birth. So that like 6-minute sequence offers literally nothing to the movie. It's already in the dialogue later, and it's an unnecessary gag visual just to like freak you out. Because I mean, it's obviously scary, but I didn't need it. It was totally unnecessary, you know.
Oh yeah, it was super unnecessary. Like I felt like half of the things that they decided to change or add to this story didn't add anything. It just made it cheaper. It made her the darker, grittier, more overt thing. Like, what the fuck is up with all these horny teens, right? Like, what, like, okay, cool. So we don't have like a naked locker scene this time. We have a bunch of girls in their bathing suits, and still through like, you know, okay, I get that. Like, maybe you understood that the first film was about like femininity and reproductive rights and all of that, but the first 5 minutes are just focusing in on these young women's crotches, right? Like, and I'm like, okay, underwater, right? And it's just a pair of legs, so there's not even like a fucking body to attach to this or anything, right? We are only focusing in on the lower half of women's bodies, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, why? I don't care. You already haven't earned anything.
Yeah. That to me is like the same. I mean, that was the same problem I had with the first one, just as far as being like, what's happening? Like, why are we like, we don't, you can get the point across without doing all this. Like, and I know there's a level of like, a lot of these like sort of teen stories, it's about sort of like experiencing sex for the first time or experiencing like sexual awakening or growth or what have you. But like even then I'm like, you don't need to do that. And I like to further what you were saying about the cheapening of not only narrative but of character, like the nuance in the first one of these quote unquote do-gooders doing a little bit of good but ultimately doing bad, like feigning goodness and performing goodness, not as a means to help Carrie, but just as a means to satiate their own conscience. In this one, the movie, like, it really constructs this idea that, like, we're going to make sure you know they're good. Like, they're so good. Like, don't even worry about it. They're great. Keep looking at how good they are and how heroic they are and how selfless. They're so selfless. Look at how selfless they are. And
to me, it felt more performative than anything.
Yes,
it made those characters feel way less genuine.
It ruins the idea. It misses the point completely. Whereas in the first one, the nuance of them thinking they're doing something good, but ultimately doing a bad thing is the point of these characters. And that's why, like, at the end, burn it all down. They're a part of this system that perpetuates these ideas. But in this one, they take away the nuance of badness, and it like really tries to paint these characters as good, but I don't understand the story at that point. Then it's just one bad person, and then Carrie's the asshole for like killing these good people. I don't. It changes the entire context of the revenge. It changes the entire context of the autonomy of Carrie because of the painting of these pictures as visually, big air quotes, genuinely good.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. Like and everything that we were talking about the first one, this one just threw that out the window, and it was like, it's like a bunch of kids got together and were like, hey, man, can you imagine if Carrie came out today? What would happen? What would be changed, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, cool. And then one of the ways that they changed it was Chris, right, took a video of what happened in the locker room and posted it to YouTube, right? Okay, fucking whatever. And then she like doubles down and gets her lawyer daddy to come in to try to get her out of whatever, right? And she uses a lot of language that it really bothered me. Because this is the only time that we hear this language in the film, where she was saying stuff like, the teacher was abusive, this is an invasion of privacy, and she's throwing out all of these words that have a lot more meaning and are really just meant to be used in a different context rather than used by some asshole Karen, you know? And I'm like, oh my God. And we don't hear anybody else use those terms or that kind of language. So to me, like, you know, as somebody that uses terms like this is abusive, this is this, or, you know, like that uses that in a critical context, for her to use those and to be the only one to use those, to me was like kind of like shitting on any sort of like social justice, you know? And I'm like, what the fuck?
Well, I think narratively it like doubles down on her insidiousness. Because she is the only one to use it, she knows what she's doing. She's using these terms manipulatively to make sure that, like, you know that I know what these things mean, and that's not me. And it's like, well, no, you know it is you. That's the point. You're the villain. You're the big bad. You're the big bad bully. You're the biggest, baddest bully, right? Like, that's you. So I think in that context, I kind of like that she was trying to disguise herself in this sort of like autonomous social justice character momentarily to sort of further her own villainy, just because it is like, even if she knows what these things are in context and is using them to her advantage, she's still evil and is still a complete piece of shit. Mm-hmm. And that only furthers that negative on her end.
I think for me, it just didn't work because, or like I just really didn't like it because that's the only time that we really see somebody using that language. Like, if anybody should have been using that language, that should have been Sue, right? Because Sue was kind of built as that social justice character, right? And so cool. If you want to make her that, then make her that. Let her use this language. Let her. But instead, we just see her fucking staring at a prom dress for 17 minutes. And she's just like, no,
Really?
this is the right thing to do. I'm sitting on the couch with my parents watching a movie on prom. And I'm like, okay, fucking whatever. But like, I like the critique of her, of Chris hiding behind that language. And especially because her dad's a lawyer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But to me, the context just didn't work because I felt like that was more of a vilification of these terms that people that use for social justice and to kind of like identify things that are going on with them or their responses to things or the world at large, you know? So so to me, that just fucking bugged the shit out of me.
Yeah, I totally see where you're coming from. It is, I mean, in that context, it's sloppy. Like, it doesn't really necessarily even make sense for the world. So yeah, I totally get you. Well, I was going to just point out something very silly when you'd mentioned that she's like sitting on the couch with her parents, like texting, like, how's the prom going? It's like, oh, she's so happy. We're doing so great. I'm like, okay, this is so stupid. But then she gets a text like, your girl looks pretty, or your girl looks pretty happy. Too bad I'm about to ruin it. And then she's like, what? Let me literally get in my car, drive all the way there just to tell her she's in danger. You're on your fucking phone. Call your boyfriend. Call Miss Collins. They're literally all in the same room. But no, you're going to drive 20 fucking minutes to your school to hopefully get inside, to hopefully stop whatever weird thing is happening. Pick your phone up, call your boyfriend, be like, hey, I got this weird text. Somebody's doing something fucked up. If we're the good-hearted, kind heroes of the story that we claim to be, tell Miss Collins, tell somebody right now, she's in danger. We need to stop this.
But also, right?
Problem solved, Queens.
Yes, 100%. But she's trying to be the martyr. She's trying to be the one to save Carrie, and she can't give anybody else that satisfaction. So that furthers her narrative of just being performative in her actions, right? She's like, I gotta do this, right? Rather than, she knows how many people there, right? She could fucking call, she could text, she could do something, you know? Call in a bomb threat, whatever, you know?
She's centering herself in this story where she is the martyr. She needs people to know that I'm literally running. I'm at the beck and call of this person. Stop. Shut. Like, you're putting on dramatics. You need to calm down. You need to stop. Call your boyfriend.
And that's actually not helpful. Like, when
you running there, you driving there is not helpful. You're putting her in more danger. You're complicit in this at this point because you're literally wasting time and allowing it to happen. Make a fucking phone call.
And when you're trying to help, you need to just actually help and not center yourself in that and not be that not be that savior, right? That's not your role. Like, you fucked up. You could have said sorry.
Yeah, just say sorry and move on. Stop trying to control her life. Like, that's the whole and that I mean, like we talked about before, that's like the faux goodness of these characters where they think that they're doing something good when in fact no, they're just centering themselves in somebody else's trauma. It's like, hey, you were a part of the problem. You were the bully, and now you're like, I've grown, I've learned. Notes app apology. I'm better now.
If you
it's like, no, you're still fucking centering yourself, you performative activist. Shut up. Like, go home, go away, get out of her life. Like, you've done harm. Say you're sorry if you must, and then leave forever. Like,
well, and also, if you really want to do something good for her, right? Say, hey, I'm really sorry about this. I know that I fucked up. How can I help? What is there something that I can do for you? I understand if there's not, but like, ask her what she wants rather than just fucking assuming she wants to go to prom with your goddamn boyfriend.
Yes, exactly. Like,
because then you're gonna give your boyfriend and then take him right back, and then she's gonna be even more crushed because she had this one night where she was the popular kid and where everything was fine, and that didn't make sense.
But just like her personal growth, it's inauthentic. It's all fake. Like, and that's the whole deal. Is like, go home and longingly stare at your dress. But do it in private. Like, you don't need to be a part of anything. You don't need to center yourself in somebody else's shit. You fucked up and learn from it, but you don't have to be like, it's like her doing this thing and then getting online every day and being like, day one of growth, my diary of how I'm growing as a grower
God.
who grows and is better and actually am an activist now. Like, hey, now this is just for clout. Now you're just performing. Like, you can just stop and you can just go read a book by yourself and not talk about it. How about that?
Yeah.
How about that? Or how about controlling somebody's life is not help or helpful. Like,
and she's still making decisions for Carrie, right?
She is.
Like,
It just made me so, I literally, when she ran to her car, I was like, you are a monster. Like, I hope she, like, in this one, the other one's like, I was just like, whatever. And I know that this is really bad, but I'm like, I hope she sees this. I hope Carrie sees this. And I hope she does with that information what she needs to do.
Yeah. It's like
we
know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But
I hope she acknowledges this instance. Like, so toxic. I want to talk about Margaret. I think Margaret is big capital G gay. And I think that because one of the first, like, so it's centering this idea of like, it's a procreative sex is an abomination. In this one, it's more like emphasized as that, like, this idea of sex is so disgusting and scary. And the first instance of chastising by Margaret to Carrie is in the shower. Instead of just like the boys are going to smell you now. And it's like this whole deal, like that kind of mind game abuse. She's mad at her because she was in the showers naked with other girls, which is the first instance of chastisement. It doesn't have to necessarily do with like heterosexual procreative sex. It has more to do with the idea of the visual sexualization of two naked women in a shower. That's what Margaret thinks of as first, and that being the sin that she's projecting onto Carrie. And I was like, oh, first and foremost, you're thinking of gay sex as the sin. You're not thinking of heterosexual sex. You're thinking of queer sex. Interesting, Margaret. Interesting. And then the more she talks about sex in that same way, like even at the end, it changes the context of when she's like, we had sex and I liked it, whatever. That felt, oh my God. First of all, Julianne Moore has my heart. Are you kidding me?
She
She's
did
so good.
Great in this role.
Obsessed.
Oh my God. She carried this whole film.
She super did. So that also, I love Judy Greer. I'm such a Judy Greer fan. So like, I'm also very here for her. Chloe, less so. Love her. She's growing. We see. But it changes the idea that she could be gay in this changes the context of her saying like, and I liked it. And like, instead of in the first one where it's like, I liked it and that's the sin, the I liked it line feels more of a performance. It feels like
that's so interesting.
Like I liked it. It was like she's trying to convince herself that she did like it because the gay thing is the thing that's wrong with her. But even in that guise of performative straightness, she's still like this big air quotes straightness is a sin. So there's like these layers to it of like self-hating queer, sex is bad, religious fanatic. Like it's all of these things. And I like with that lens, watching that performance, I was like, she's so good. Like she's nailing every level of this. I'm getting every moment. And even like there's an anxiousness that she shows in the scene when Sue's mom comes into the dry cleaner. When they're having that whole exchange. And also, oh my God, the anxious self-harm, that was so scary. That was honestly one of the scariest parts of the movie. Where it's like the shot of her leg and she has that thing and she's just like piercing her skin because she's
looked
anxious.
Away.
I was like,
I did.
And that to me, I'm like, the knife and the baby thing, that's too easy and not really saying much. You want terrifying? That fucking scene is terrifying.
Well, and then if you're looking at that through the queer lens that you're talking about too, she's talking to another woman who is attractive, right?
She's talking to a pretty woman. She's talking to the pretty girl's mom and the one who's confident. And so there's this power exchange, this power dynamic where she knows who it is. She doesn't want to talk to her. She goes there. And not only is there the level of like, your daughter bullied my daughter, but she can hardly even look at her. She's so anxious. She's so fidgety. She can't look up. She can't like be around her. And this is the first instance that we see her acting that way towards anybody else. She's never that anxious. Yeah, sure, she's like she's manic, but she's never like as fidgety or as anxious as she is around Sue's mom. And I was like, she's gay. She's so gay. Like, oh my God, she's so gay. Like
that changes the whole context. Holy shit, that's great.
She's so terrified of her feelings. She's literally self-harming. Like, she's standing there, like, so nervous, so anxious, standing in front of this person. In her mind, she is taking that information, being like, I think she's attractive. That's bad. That's a sin. I need to punish myself. So under the desk, she's cutting herself at the same time to try to ingrain this idea of pain with these feelings to try to turn not gay, right? Like, that's the vibe that I got. And the whole time I was like, oh my God, yes, she's gay. That's the whole thing. And it's like gay trauma and religious trauma all melded into one. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so familiar. I know all of this. I know exactly who you are, Julianne Moore. Yes, this is so good. So, Julianne Moore, if you're listening, thank you for your Oscar-worthy performance in the remake.
I mean, like, truly, like, she was just so good and so intense in this movie. Like, anytime she was on screen, you're just like, you have my full attention. Mm-hmm. Like, every other time, I was just so fucking bored by this movie. And then anytime she was on screen, I was like, ooh. Even the parts where I had to look away when she's like cutting, I was like, oh yeah, like, I can't do it. But fucking lovely.
And here's my other thing too. What I hated about this one is it got to the autonomy way too quickly. Like, one of the first conversations Carrie has with Margaret is her essentially saying, like, I didn't sin, you sinned. Like, whatever. And I'm like, hey.
That's not in the Bible, Mom. And
yeah, this is our first conversation with you guys. Like, you need to get there, because if you're already off the bat, level 1, I know better than you and whatever. It's like, where is the control? Where's the abuse? Where's the religious trauma? Yeah, exactly. Like, why? Like, to me, it felt so bizarre that moment happened so early on, because I was like, then I don't really know what the story is. Because not to say that, like, I need more abuse or trauma, like, but within the context of the story, like, that's the whole point of the revenge. That's the whole point of her literally coming into her power is because she was powerless. It was because she had no control. It's because of these things. And if in the first scene with the most controlling character in her life, canonically, if the first conversation they're really having together is her being like, you're no longer in control, I'm in control. That's Act 1, y'all. Like, what else happens then? Okay,
thanks, Mom. Like,
congrats.
Sure.
Good movie. 32 minutes. Loved it. Really, really loved it. You know what I mean? Like, it literally pulls the stakes away from, like, it just, where are the stakes? You've gotten to the end. So now nothing is going to make sense. Like, the revenge payoff doesn't make sense. Like, and again, coupled with, like, the goodifying of the other characters and making them less nuanced, it's like, well, then that also doesn't make sense. So I'm like, I don't get it. I just don't get the choices.
In this movie, Carrie is a participant of the patriarchy, right? And she has no struggle. She has no problem. You know, she's, like you said, like, she's just like, I mean, sure, she's traumatized and she goes and says her prayers and stuff like that, but she's already fighting back. She's already, you know, there's really not a lot of growth for her, because then, you know, she thinks Tommy's cuter because he mentions the Bible, right? And you're like, oh my God, gross, right? And then when she uses her powers, like, the first one, it was just kind of like subtle, and it was just, you know, like, it was never incredibly overt, whereas this one, it was just like her fucking powers were everywhere all the time, and that to me was boring, because it was like, okay, whatever, you have powers, I don't care. Like, I don't, because this isn't a response to anything. You're practicing, you're doing all of this isn't saying anything, you know. And then when she uses her powers on her mom, she locks her mom in the closet and burns the lock, right? And she says, I love you, right, as she walks out, and leaves her mom to fucking hurt herself and scream in there. While she, in the same breath, walks out and asks her date if she looks okay. Like, if that's not patriarchy, I don't fucking know what is.
So here's my problem, and I'm just realizing it now. They girl bossed Carrie. They really did. They really just said, you know what? Carrie had no autonomy. Not in 2013.
Sup, girl.
Feminism. Go, girl. You go kill your school. You know what I mean? And it's just, and to me,
oh my
it's
God,
like,
she is girl boss Carrie.
that's so literally besides the point. That is the most Target brand bullshit feminism I've ever seen. Because it, again, like you said, like the whole point of this story and of, again, the revenge is this is like a sort of trauma response to the abuse that she faced. And if she is now going to become the abuser, what the fuck? Like, what does that mean?
I had no fucking sympathy for her. I was like, wait, you're locking your mom in the closet.
Girl
sure,
boss.
I get it, revenge. Like, this isn't Carrie. This movie, even though it's the same fucking plot, even though it's like the same premise and all of that, and like most of the dialogue is like exactly the same, to me, it's not Carrie. It's not the same movie. It's all fucking, like you said, girl boss and stuff. Like, literally locking and like sealing it with her powers, which I don't know how she got like those finger flame. I don't know. Like, that's not telekinesis. But like, she like welds her shut in that fucking door and just like,
yeah,
I love you. Like,
See,
Carrie was way more abusive than half the people on this.
I can't stop thinking about this. But in that moment, I thought, when she welds it shut and turns around, I thought it was going to be the Shania Twain, like, ba, ba, na, 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 and it's going to be like, let's go, girls. And then,
oh my God.
Going
Can
out
somebody...
tonight, I'm feeling all right. I'm just like, that's the song.
Can you do that and put that on YouTube for me, please?
And then the rest of it is just like her destroying the school for the chorus. Man,
oh my God.
I feel
Danny,
like
make
a
this
woman.
happen.
Man, I feel like a woman.
It just feels like it's the most besides the point feminism idea. Because that's like, you literally miss the point of the movie if that's the way you're going to try to change it to be like, well, no, she's in control. It's like, yeah, I guess technically you're correct. But like, that's not the problem. That wasn't the problem. That's not the story. This is like, it was fucking silly. Oh, also, and I know that this is like whatever, and I know that Chloe Grace Moretz is a good actor, and I don't want to like knock this, but this was at a weird point in her acting career where like she had such a catalog as like a child actor, like as a young person being a young person. This is like right at the cusp of where she was trying to transition into, I'm an adult actor. I'm an adult now. I'm no longer the kid that people remember me as. But I really could have done without the 25 minutes of her wide-eye, open mouth, slightly cross-eyed, like the food's almost to our table stare. Like when she's like,
Kristen Stewart stare?
Yes. At a certain point, it was too many times. Like, I know that we're trying to show off CG. I know that we're really trying to like get in here with the telepathy. And
Oh
you're,
my
like,
God,
adding
that
a lot
fucking
more of
blood.
That. Yeah.
Ugh.
Oh yeah. Like we don't need all that, and I don't like this stare. It's also not a good one. Sissy Spacek, her stare, terrifying. That was good. She did so good, but then I feel like Chloe Grace Moretz, it just. Maybe it didn't read because of the context of the movie as a whole, and I already was kind of like feeling a little silly about it. So every time I saw her face, I was like, haha, silly. Just because that was like the way that my mind was processing the movie. But with that being said, that was just like a small thing. And again, I love Chloe Grace Moretz. I think she's a great actor, and it's besides the point. But I just was like, too many times.
I mean, that's like kind of the whole movie, though. Like everything was
Yeah.
like, too much. It's either too much information, like the characterization went too far into like the extremes, right? Or like the fucking bad boyfriend, we're gonna go to jail, and then like the overt vilification of Chris, right? I was just like, fucking go to bed, right? I could not care less about her or her shitty boyfriend, right? And then there's like just so many moments where it was like just kind of silly, like when she levitated her mom and she was like, there's that throwaway line of like, well, dad or grandma had telekinesis. And I was like, wait, what? What?
Yeah, okay.
Like, and I was like, wait, you know nothing about your daddy. You know nothing about like, where the fuck is this coming from, you know? And then like the CG blood was awful. Like,
did you love the car sequence?
Oh my God.
Obsessed.
With like her face through the windshield.
That was the funniest thing. It was so unnecessary and poorly done. Like, throw the car and then she's not wearing a seatbelt, so her face would just like squish into the glass. The windshield will stay, but her face just squishes through it, and you're like, what? And then they like lock eyes and then she dies and you're like, wait, what?
Okay.
Why? Like, there's so many choices that either were intentional and just missed the point, or were just very weird nonsense choices just for aesthetic. It's just silly. It's just silly shit. Yeah, I don't know. The teen drama fight scenes were not interesting and also not good. But that's
I was not invested in the story at all. I did not care. I could. In the last one, it was like, you know, I was rooting for Carrie the whole time. And then when she got her revenge, even though like the whole situation with prom was like gross, I was like, I mean, at least it was so good to see her smile. And then the blood thing, and then it was like, fucking go off, get him, right? And then this one, like, it was just kind of like, I did not care. They did not earn this ending. They did not do anything to make me give a shit about anybody in this movie.
I guess I have to acknowledge, based on like the thing that I was saying earlier, as far as like making these characters good. In the end, when she's in her sort of like revenge mode, she does do like selective choosing of who she's going to kill. Unlike the last one where it's just like, well, you're here, you're dead. Sorry, I don't make the rules.
You're a participant in the patriarchy. The patriarchy cannot be reformed. Fucking burn it down.
Exactly,
abolition.
which I'm
She's
like,
an abolition
yes.
queen.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm like, yes, this makes sense and I love this story. But in this one, it's like, well, you were good to me, but you were kind of an asshole, so I'm going to choke you and then I'm going to set you down. And then I don't really know you, so you can go. But that group over there, I'm going to kill all of you. And it's like, what is this? Doesn't make sense in the context of Carrie, in the context of like what this story means and what it's trying to say. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's a bad script.
It's a bad, yeah. It was just bad. That whole sequence felt so like her just doing that selective process. Just like, this is, stop it. Just stop.
I'm kind of surprised that nobody filmed it and put it on YouTube.
Oh,
like,
I know,
within
right?
the context of the story, like it starts with YouTube and ends with YouTube. Oh my God.
Y'all get out your phones. Oh my God. And then the fucking at the end. Where Sue Snell is on the stand, like newly pregnant and being like, she was just misunderstood.
Oh my God.
People just didn't get her.
I forgot about that.
And like, I don't know if she said this and I'm making this up because I hate the character and the way she was written. I'm the only one who understood her and I'm the only one who got her. Like,
you're still centering yourself even in death. In death.
And then she like goes to the graveyard and like leaves a white rose as like a piece off or like whatever. And I'm like, this is so boring. And then, oh my God, obsessed with this nonsense ending. The cracking of the headstone, like all of a sudden the leaves like rise and start spinning around the headstone, and then the headstone starts cracking, and then it's like Carrie, and it's like, wait,
yeah.
Oh, is it Carrie 2, Revenge of the Carrie? Like, I don't. What are we doing? Is she back?
Okay.
Did she come back?
That was
Did she just
so
break
silly.
open? Are you trying to establish a CCU, a Carrie Cinematic Universe? Are you trying to like what are we doing here, y'all? Like, what is this point? I don't. Why?
Because like, okay,
literally for anything in this movie, why? Like,
because like
why?
I loved the first ending. The first ending in the original Carrie fucking got
great.
me. I was like, okay, cool, this is done. I was like, oh my God. And I read that Stacey Sapek went to theaters when this movie first came out, like, and just like popped in from theater to theater just to watch the last 5 minutes to see people's reactions. And I love that. I think that is so cute. And then this one, it's like headstone cracking, and I'm like, what? And it's all about Sue. Like even the fucking end is about Sue, and I don't like this movie so much.
It was just boring. I mean, there's like we discussed, some great performances, some cool stuff. Generally, as a whole, gonna be a big yikes. I'm good with this. I don't need. I'm
done. Let's go to the outro. We're back. Cool. So, Eric.
Yes.
The 1976 version of the film Carrie. Who was it for?
I think it was for patriarchy abolitionists.
Ooh, I love that.
Just in general, just as like anti-patriarchy, anti-misogynists. Yeah, just in general. Because, I mean, again, it's a good story. And, I mean, granted, I haven't read the book, so I don't know, like, what carried over.
There you go.
Yeah, there it is. So I don't know, like, what is what as far as, like, who is to be credited for the success, I feel, of the narrative of the first one. But it was strong. It was centered. It had an opinion. It very clearly displayed that opinion. It discussed a lot, and I liked it.
I really like the answer that it was for patriarchal abolitionists. I'm also going to say yes, and it's also for people that have like mommy issues, right?
Yeah.
Or for young women that just don't feel seen and feel attacked by the patriarchy, that maybe don't realize that they're patriarchal abolitionists yet, but are on their way there or will eventually become that, you know? This is like an awakening for you, this film. And you said that you liked it, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd never seen it before. Obviously, it was on my list. I like Sissy Spacek. I've wanted to watch this movie for a while, and I'm happy it didn't disappoint. I'm happy that it was good. I mean, it's great. It's a good movie, and I'm happy it's a notable classic that is actually good and not just bad, but people say it's good. You know what I mean? Like, I'm happy it's an actual good movie.
Yeah, definitely. I loved this movie. I could not be more excited. I didn't know what to expect, you know, because I knew it was, the only thing I knew about this movie was like the blood scene, right? Like, you know, just because that's like in the iconic pop culture ethos, right? It's just like, oh, Carrie, haha, are you gonna pull a Carrie, right?
Yeah.
Because it's funny the way that men talk about this movie, like about feminine rage and about just like, well, she went nuts and she did this, and it's like, you have not, you've missed everything.
Yeah.
And also you're the problem. But no, I could not love this movie. I mean, I could love this movie a little bit more, but I loved it so much more than I was expecting. And I want to say that this is probably one of my favorite films.
Oh, yeah?
I love and maybe
that.
it's just hitting me right now at like the right moment in my life, because things are wild. But yeah, holy shit, this is a great movie. Yeah, I love this movie.
Yeah,
I stand.
It was fantastic. Yeah, I honestly, I couldn't agree more. I think it's a really good movie.
What about the 2013 version? Is this new, interesting, or the same? Progressive, regressive? How has the story evolved with today's ideals?
I think it was new because it completely redacted all of the interesting takes of the first one. So it was new because it was different. It wasn't new by any sense of the word by any semblance of growth. I think it was regressive, very, very much so, because again, it's dismantling of the anti-patriarchal commentary. It like kind of just dissolved it completely, and it missed the point. It missed the point of the movie. I don't think that it evolved with today's ideals. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna take that back. I think it has evolved with today's ideals in the sense of faux feminism or of girl boss feminism in that way, where it's performative, where it's, oh yeah, a sweatshop queen, slay, like go off, girl boss, who, like, you know what I mean? Like that whole the whole vibe of like, yes, visualization, yes, inclusion, but at the same time, like, just because you are this thing doesn't mean you can't also be bad or be doing bad things. And that sort of just like that vibe. Like, I feel like this whole movie was a performative film. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this movie was new and the same at the same time because, like I said, like the beats are the same. Like a lot of the dialogue is the same, you know, a lot of the scenes are exactly the same. But it was just because they removed all of the context that made the first one so good. Like, truly, it ended up just being so boring. So it is new and the same in the most boring possible way.
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly regressive because this movie is not saying anything. And if it's saying anything, it's, you know, girl boss. Okay, cool. You know, I honestly don't feel like this film is saying anything. I think it's just a couple of people that are like, man, it'd be so cool if we did Carrie. Like, we could bring in YouTube. It'll be a whole thing, right? And there was absolutely no reason to remake this movie. No. Eric, who is this for?
I don't mean this, and well, you know what? I'm not gonna caveat. I think this movie was for Chloe Grace Moretz's acting career. I think that this was at a time where she was kind of not necessarily the it girl, but a little bit. For a younger audience, yes, where she was sort of starting to transition from like beloved child star to adult actor that people take very seriously. I think in that same way, this was at a time where a lot of things were getting rebooted. I mean, a lot of things continue to get rebooted, but I feel like this was like, yeah, we're rebooting everything. We're doing Fright Night. We're doing
oh my God, I can't wait
we're
to
doing
talk
like
about
all
Fright
of these
Night.
things, right? Like, and I know that I feel like Carrie was just one of those. And again, for the same reason, like kind of how we started the podcast of having the conversation, like, did we need this, right? Like, was this necessary? No, it was for nostalgia. But they used this remake as a vehicle for Chloe to kind of hopefully let her shine along beloved actors like Julianne Moore and Judy Greer, right? Like, she can play in the adult realm of Hollywood, and this, we're going to show the world that she can. I think that's the only reason this movie got made.
I see what you mean. I see what you're saying. And I think personally that the script was actually written for like TNT. And
drag them through the mud.
Well, I mean, or like USA, or, you know, like
yeah, honestly, it's a Hallmark script. We're just going
truly. And then somebody picked it up accidentally and it was like, oh yeah, this would be cute, right? And like this did not feel to me like it was supposed to be a major motion picture, like maybe like straight to Netflix. You know, no ad marketing behind it. This felt like the most nothing movie. So who was this for? This was for fucking nobody. That's who this was for. Did you like it, Eric?
No. I mean, I liked Julianne Moore in it. I think that she, showstopper, tore the house down. But that's the thing, is I feel like Julianne Moore is such a staple in acting for me. Like, when I think actor, I'm like, yeah, Julianne Moore is an actor. She acts like she is a professional. This is her field. Judy Greer is great too, but Julianne Moore still the show. And that's the only part I liked. Did you like it?
I 100% agree. I did not like it. I did not like anything about it except Julianne Moore, because holy shit, she's just incredible.
She's so good.
She's an incredible actor. But yeah, other than that, no.
Truly, truly, truly.
I think that's it.
I think that's it too. Yeah.
Well,
good for us.
Thank you so much again, Nicole, for writing in and suggesting this movie. Again, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
And if anybody else out there has suggestions, we would absolutely love to hear from you. You can get in touch with us on our social media, on Instagram, Twitter, our email, or our website. But yeah, we really appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening. Please, if you enjoy the show, rate and review us.
Also, check out our Patreon. Seriously, we have great stuff on there. We have a whole entire show, the NOTstalgia podcast, where we just kind of gab about whatever we're watching that week. It's very cute, very exclusive. You're absolutely going to love it. And you can join for as little as $3 a month. We would really appreciate literally anything. So please check us out on Patreon, NOTstalgia on Patreon. Please. We love you. Mwah.
Thanks again so much for listening. Our artwork and music is by Eric Lefebvre. Our editing is by Danny Barkley. And thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Jess. I love this.
Me too. And remember, stay cute.
And stay critical.
Bye.
Bye. This podcast has been brought to you by the NOTstalgia Network.
Visit thenotStalgiaNetwork.com for more.
Hey everybody, I'm Eric.
I'm Shelby.
I'm Jake.
And we are the band Lousy Advice from the Lousy Advice Podcast.
Come listen as we draft artist and genre-centric best of lists.
With the help of our closest friends.
These lists are canon.
And there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it.
From Misfits to Cher.
Green Day to Gaga.
Or Pup to Paramore.
Listen to the Lousy Advice Podcast now, or else.
Stream us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the NOTstalgia Network, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget that we are the band Lousy Advice, and this is our podcast, the Lousy Advice Podcast.
The Lousy Advice Podcast?
The Lousy Advice Podcast. Podcast.